watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. From Toronto, Ontario, I'm Catherine Bullock. Assalamu alaikum and greetings of peace. Today a conversation with Yasser Dhouib about the impact of the coup in Tunisia on Canada's Tunisian population. But first, some news headlines. Storm in Nova Scotia results in 25,000 power outages. Fate of Quebec Mosque shooter to be decided in March 2022. Bring Jack back from Kurdish prison, says Canadian father. US diplomats to boycott Beijing 2022 Olympics. Pope Francis says we are in the age of walls and barbed wire. And now the details. Nova Scotia was dealt with a wave of heavy rain and winds last night that cut power for thousands of people. There were over 25,000 reports of power outages across the province. Power companies have been working to restore connections, with the effort expected to wrap up around 11 p.m. tonight. Multiple ferry terminals and schools were closed after the heavy downpour. Environment Canada expects the province to be hit with a wave of snowfall later this week. The Supreme Court of Canada will decide on March 24, 2022, whether to give the Quebec City Mosque shooter his original sentence of 2 life terms in prison without parole for 40 years. Alexandre Bissonnette was sentenced to 2 life terms after he opened fire in a Quebec mosque that killed 6 and injured dozens of others. Bissonnette's sentence is the longest that has ever been handed down from the Quebec court. In 2019, Bissonnette's defense lawyers successfully appealed to reduce his sentence from 40 years to 25. Quebec's Attorney General then escalated the case to the Supreme Court to reinstate the 40-year sentence. John Letts and his ex-wife Sally are in Ottawa this week to lobby the government to bring their son Jack back from a Kurdish prison in Syria. Jack is currently detained by Kurdish forces as they believe he was part of Daesh or ISIS. The Kurds were prepared to return Jack to the United Kingdom in 2017, but the UK declined, and 2 years later revoked his citizenship. This leaves Canada as the Letts' last hope. Jack's parents are worried for his mental health and believe that he is suffering after being tortured dozens of times. John is prepared for his son to stand trial in Canada for his supposed crimes. The United States will commit to a diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Winter Olympics and Paralympics over reports of human rights abuses in China, announced President Joe Biden yesterday. While United States athletes can still compete in the event, there will not be an official U.S. delegation in attendance. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says that China's crimes against humanity and genocide in Xinjiang are among the primary reasons for the boycott. Canada passed a motion earlier this year to denounce China's actions as genocide, yet are still debating a boycott in the House. Human rights organization Justice for All was among those who called for the boycott. Pope Francis urged globally coordinated action to tackle the refugee issue as he visited Greece on Sunday. Francis criticized the European Union's stance on refugees and for hardening border controls. The Pope warned that problems are not resolved by building walls higher, but by joining forces to care for others and in respect for the law. He called for valuing every human life. Fleeing war or poverty, tens of thousands of refugees from Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, and Libya have turned toward Europe in recent years. That's it for the news. And now our interview with Yasser Dhouib from the Canadian Observatory for Freedom and Rights about the coup in Tunisia's effect on the Tunisian community in Canada. Welcome to the show, Brother Yasser. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I can't believe it's been already 10 years. It feels like it was just yesterday, actually, when the unfortunate self-immolation of that merchant led to that whole spark of Arab uprisings right across the North Africa and other parts of the Arab world. And only Tunisia maintained in these last 10 years the path towards democratization. And people were holding Tunisia up as an example of what could happen, the bargaining between the Islamists and the secularists. And things seem to have gone wrong this year in July. Can you please share with our viewers who might not be following what's happened?
Basically, I think as you have rightly mentioned, that Tunisia was the exception for as far as the Arab world was concerned after the Arab Spring. So it was actually the main success, the sole success that was achieved in a democracy, real, I would say, a relevant democracy with Western standards, I would say. So after the 25th of July, there has been a coup actually staged by the current president, who is a civilian coup staged by the actual president Qais Said, and he actually banned the parliament in the midst, of course, of crisis that has quite different, let's say, prospect, I would say, with the COVID-19, with the stalling of the parliament, unfortunately. But this actually, the president went beyond actually what the constitution was saying, and unfortunately, he did really made a very unfortunate, I would say, coup against this parliament and against these achievements.
So he suspended parliament, he's arrested ministers, and he's now ruling by decree. There are thousands on the street, apparently, according to the news reports, in support of what's going on, and thousands rallying against him. Is this the same in Canada's Tunisian community? Is there a divide between supporters and opponents?
Let me be clear, actually. Saying that the current president has supporters among Tunisian people is not really, it goes far to the current, I would say, actual situation. No, it's not really true. I think there has been important manifestation, important rallies against the president in Tunisia and the capital of Tunisia, Tunis, in October, November, and people are actually vociferating, I would say, against this coup. So, and this, of course, it impacts on the current situation in Canada. I mean, the Tunisian people are divided. What I'm saying, actually, that what the last 10 years have been, I would say, important step for a young democracy. And what the Tunisian people is not really understanding, that they are in a trial and error, let's say, process, and which is unfortunately something that people, I mean, the main, I would say, current people would not really understand it. But of course, this momentum is actually being built in terms of against the coup. And this is actually, it is very important. So when we go back to Canada, of course, I mean, there are some Tunisians who are not really, accepting this situation, but still, the situation is very hazy. I would say it's not really clear.
Is the Tunisian community in Canada very large? Do you have any idea of the numbers?
Yeah, basically, the Tunisian community is large in terms in Quebec due to linguistic, I would say, affinities with Quebec, because Tunisia has been a former French colony. So mainly the Tunisian are based in Quebec, in Montreal, and Quebec City. But of course, there are some Tunisian in Ottawa and in Ontario and BC, but mainly they are in a French section of Canada.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, earlier you said it was a coup by the current President Qais Said, and I know that he has put out an arrest warrant for a former, I think it's Prime Minister Marzouki. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. For saying exactly that it's a coup. So do you have any fears yourself of using these words, that there might be any implications on your safety here in Canada?
Yeah, sure. I mean, of course. I mean, actually, the president is building up his, I would say, political and apparatus in terms when it comes. Actually, we're going back to square one in terms of rules and democratic rules, unfortunately. Safety, of course, but I'm, I'm not really speaking about my personal safety. I'm talking about the Tunisian safety, the Tunisian people's safety. But right now, I think we're living and we're going back to square one when it comes to the freedoms that the Tunisians have had for hardly actually during the revolution. I think that
So you must feel very happy to see thousands of people out protesting protesting the coup and calling it a coup.
sure.
Does it feel like it's happening again, like what happened 10 years ago happening again?
Not to that extent, with this is I would say it as it's a marathon, of course. I mean, actually, of course, the current president has used it, of course, the contempt that the Tunisian people have had with the parliament and with the problem with the parliament, actually. So and with the different problems that the Tunisia has faced in terms of COVID, of the economic slumps. But we are running. He's actually running short of time. Actually, in terms, he's not really presenting a political roadmap for the Tunisian people. He's not really also proposing actually viable economical a roadmap for the Tunisian land. So right now he's in short of time, and the patient is wearing thin for the Tunisian.
So you have written an op-ed with a partner from the Canadian Observatory for Freedom and Rights, basically saying, sorry?
Former Canadian diplomat, Bruce Mabley.
Oh, former Canadian, right, yes. And in that article, you said the Canadian government had remained mute on what's going on. I believe the US government is considering imposing sanctions. Why do you think Canada's government has remained mute?
I think the Canada government, of course, we have to understand that, of course, that there has been during that coup. I mean, Canada was in the midst of electoral process. So I think the government was not really, the current prime minister and the government was not really ready, at least, to be focused on the international stage. But what was interesting, actually, after the election of the government, or the current government, a re-election of the prime minister, that having in mind that Tunisia and Canada are both members of the Francophonie Summit, and it happens to be that the Francophonie Summit was going to be held in Djerba in the south of Tunisia. We did our utmost in terms in that op-ed to make understand the current Canadian government, or also the international opinion, that staging an important summit of La Francophonie in Tunisia is not really is of course at odds with the democracy values that Canada believes in. So I think there has been an important outreach being done by the Tunisian, actually by our the Canadian Observatory for Freedom and Right, with vis-a-vis the Canadian government.
The summit, the Francophonie summit, was postponed. Yeah. Are you lobbying the government still, though? What are the things that you're asking the government to do?
We were asking the government, actually, and of course we're asking all the important, let's say, sectors of the Canadian government, that Tunisia needs to be, at least the current president needs to be, needs to understand that staging this coup is not really a viable option for this national democracy. And I think what we had in Afghanistan, unfortunately, the complete failure of this attempts in terms of creating a democratic framework for the Islamic world. The losing Tunisia is not really, would of course be presented as at a high cost for the West and for Canada.
So democratization is always I think you said this earlier, one step forward, two steps back, and we hope that the people of Tunisia are able to achieve their goals. Thank you for joining us on the show. We've run out of time, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You've been watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Stay tuned for the next episode. Stay safe and God bless.